Hey, this is WWE Hall of Famer from the Legion of Doom, Road War Ammo, and you're watching another original wrestling documentary. Oh, what a rush.
The American Wrestling Association was a wrestling promotion based in Minneapolis, Minnesota that ran from the late 1950s to the early 1990s. For most of its existence, it was owned by Vern Gagne and Wally Carbo, who purchased a one-third share of the territory in 1952 from its original owner, Tony Stetcher, who had been promoting bouts in the area since the early 1930s and was also a co-founding member of the National Wrestling Alliance. It was part of the 5 original National Wrestling Alliance territories in 1948, but broke away, becoming independent in 1960. As a result, the AWA became one of the most successful territories in the world, promoting shows in cities such as Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Chicago, Omaha, Winnipeg, Denver, Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, San Francisco, Phoenix, and throughout the Midwest region, until its main talent was plucked by the World Wrestling Federation in its national expansion and eventual demise in the early 1990s. This is the untold story of the American Wrestling Association. It was 1933, as the Great Depression was facing its worst year ever, with the unemployment rate reaching 25%. The New York Rangers beat the Toronto Maple Leafs to win their second Stanley Cup. Bank robber Clyde Barrow kills Deputy Sheriff Malcolm Davis after walking into a trap set for another criminal. The game of Monopoly is invented. And Tony Stetcher, brother and trainer of world heavyweight champion Joe Stetcher, established headquarters in downtown Minneapolis for his newly formed athletic club, which would focus on promoting both boxing and professional wrestling cards in the area for the next 20 years. Tony Stetcher was a founding member of the NWA. In 1952, he sold a one-third interest in the promotion to his son Dennis and Wally Carbo. Stetcher died on October 9, 1954, and Carbo and Dennis took over control of the promotion. Vern Gagne had become a well-known and popular wrestling champion nationally in the 1950s as a result of his appearance on the Dumont Network. He was also one of the highest-paid wrestlers in the 1950s, earning more than $100,000 a year. In 1959, Dennis Stetcher sold his majority stake in the Minneapolis Boxing and Wrestling Club to Carbo and Gagne. They then became co-owners of the promotion. In 1960, after unsuccessfully lobbying the NWA for a title match between Gagne and the NWA World Champion Pat O'Connor, Gagne and Carbo led certain territories out of the NWA, forming the AWA. The AWA unilaterally recognized the NWA World Champion Pat O'Connor as AWA World Champion and gave him 90 days to defend the AWA title against Gagne. The NWA ignored the challenge. O'Connor was stripped of the AWA title and it was awarded to Gagne on August 16, 1960. While O'Connor was considered the first AWA champion, he didn't wrestle in the AWA until the 1960s when he teamed with Wilbur Snyder to win the AWA World Tag Team Championship. Vern Gagne was an amateur wrestling champion who had earned a spot on the U.S. team at the 1948 Summer Olympics. He ran the AWA with a traditionalist sensibility, firmly believing that sound technical wrestling should be the basis of a pro wrestling company. Starting in the 1970s, Gagne trained his newcomer wrestlers from his farm in Minnesota. Soon-to-be stars like the Iron Sheik, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, Ken Patera, Greg Gagne, and arguably the greatest wrestler of the 1980s and 1990s, Ric Flair. Relationships were also developed with existing promotions in Houston, Memphis, and San Antonio. Gagne's westward expansion into traditional NWA territories was made possible due to his relationships and business partnerships he had forged for decades. More often than not, the result of other promoters struggling to survive rather than purchase or hostile takeover by Gagne. After Gagne's retirement in 1981, he focused the promotion on Nick Bockwinkel, a loyal employee of several years who was a mat wrestling technician like Gagne had been. Bockwinkel faced numerous challengers for the title in the early 1980s, including Rick Martel, Otto Wands, Mad Dog Vachon, and even Wahoo McDaniel. Arguably his most famous opponent would be Hulk Hogan. Starting in 1982, and accelerated by a role in the hit film Rocky III, Hogan rapidly caught on as a babyface with AWA fans, and became the AWA's top draw. But even as his popularity grew to unprecedented levels, Gagne refused to make him the AWA World Heavyweight Champion. He recognized Hogan's showmanship and charisma and was well aware of his potential drawing power, but still believed a wrestling company should be built around one of its best technical wrestlers and looked at Hogan as a powerhouse wrestler. On the Spectacular Legacy of the AWA DVD, Gagne denied bias against Hogan and defended his actions by reasoning that he believed that Hogan's pursuit of the title was enough to draw an audience and that he didn't need a belt. On 2 occasions, Gagne went so far as to tease AWA title wins for Hogan, only to return the title to Bockwinkel via technicalities. The first was on April 18, 1982. Hogan defeated Bockwinkel with the help of a foreign object that Bockwinkel's manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, had interjected into the match. After the 3 count, the belt was awarded to Hogan and he was announced as the new champion. Heenan informed the referee of the object and the ref questioned Hogan about this, but the blood on Hogan's face was evidence that the object had also been used on him. The ref stood by his decision and Hogan left the arena as the new AWA World Champion. 6 days later on AWA television, AWA President Stanley Blackburn stripped Hogan of the title and returned it to Bockwinkel. The second such occasion was on a Super Sunday card in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1983. Hogan again pinned Bockwinkel, was awarded the belt, and announced as the new champion. This time Blackburn came into the ring moments after the match and tried to have Hogan retroactively disqualified for throwing the champion over the top rope a few minutes before the pinfall occurred. However, this match had been booked as a no disqualification match, which prevented this, so Blackburn simply stripped Hogan of the title and once again handed it back to Bockwinkel. The crowd almost rioted when learning that Hogan was once again cheated out of the belt, and Bockwinkel later had to do damage control with the rabid crowd, telling the audience to calm down afterwards as well. Hogan responded by attacking Bockwinkel and his manager Bobby Heenan. On the DVD, The Spectacular Legacy of the AWA, it was revealed that Vern Gagne planned to have Hogan win the belt that night, but only if he would give Gagne the bulk of the revenues that Hogan was earning from his merchandise and his periodic main event performances in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Outraged at being strong-armed, Hogan refused, but nonetheless offered a 50-50 split instead. Gagne refused and kept the belt from him. However, Hogan did admit in his autobiography, My Life Outside the Ring, that he still intended to stay with the AWA and that Vern Gagne had planned to book him in steel cage matches with Bockwinkel in an effort to expand the AWA to the New York market, but he decided to leave when Vince McMahon offered him the World Wrestling Federation Championship.
You get rubbed out, scrubbed out, stuck up, then wrung out, poked out, then pointed out, gun barrel in your mouth, seamed out and scratched out, squeezed out and backed out, I stick out and stand out, got my shit planned out, like fast food takeout, I make them all tap out.